And a very good evening to you again. I don't know what's happening tonight. It seems as if Facebook is playing a lot of games with us tonight. And so those of you who are on Facebook, I hope you up over to YouTube. We are going to proceed on YouTube. Good evening and welcome to Politics 101 tonight. Tonight, Black Matters. Black Matters. We want to talk a little bit. I think we have some time. Talk a little bit about Black issues tonight and what we have to do. Welcome to all of you who are joining us, wherever you're joining us from. As I said, Facebook seems to be playing some serious games with us tonight. So we are not on Facebook. I think they seem to be playing some games tonight. Anyhow, welcome to tonight's edition. We're going to proceed with what we have. Tonight, I want us to talk a little bit about specifically the African Guyanese condition and how we have to proceed. We spend a lot of time on these programs, speaking against the backdrop of the political parties, and that is fair. Political parties are important because political parties organize for political power, and political power is important. But we are also trying to organize outside of political parties, I think. I think we have to organize outside of political parties. That is, we have to work on several fronts. I start from the thesis that there is a serious assault on the Black community. The PPP, of course, is bent on dominating Guyana. And that program of domination includes economic domination, political domination, of course, and in the process, African Guyanese are being consumed. Now, let us be very clear. It is partly intentional, in that I'm sure there are people in the PPP who would like to see African Guyanese become second-class citizens in Guyana. And it may be partly indirect, in the sense that in our ethnically divided society, if you are going to dominate as the ethnic party, by necessity, the ethnic group of the other side is going to suffer. Either way, whether it's intentional or not intentional, we in the African Guyanese community face serious problems in our country. We face the problem of becoming permanent second-class citizens in Guyana. And I am saying that politics and party politics have their place. Party politics, you have to wait every 5 years for elections to come around and to try to change the government. That is, of course, an option. But the way things are going in Guyana, we can't wait to bring about the fundamental changes to keep African Guyanese as equal citizens. We can't afford to wait every 5 years or wait for 5 years for that. And so there is work that has to be done now. You look around, we've been covering those things on this program and all other programs. The gentleman's agreement between the two parties have been breached. The PPP now feels bold to go into Black communities and do as it feels. The PPP uses the state, it takes away the subvention that it had got. It is going into African Guyanese communities, bulldozing homes. It is going into the communities and in an obscene way, under the guise of trying to get votes, raiding the African Guyanese community, taking advantage of their impoverished state, stripping them of their right to decide which party they want to choose. I saw the Vice President in a report today. Vice President Jack Deers reported as telling the PPP faithful that if their councillors get elected, the central government will give them the resources. In effect, what he's saying is if the PPP is not elected, the local governments will not get resources. Plain and simple. So they're trying everything to break the African Guyanese community. And some African Guyanese have decided that they are going to commit suicide. And they're going to go over for some crumbs. The vast majority of African Guyanese are not doing that. But it is very clear the rules of engagement have been breached. There are certain things that the PNC knows that they should not do in Indian communities, and there are certain things that the PPP knew that they should not do in African Guyanese communities. The PPP has breached that understanding. They've breached that understanding. The PPP is very brazenly using the funds at its disposal to punish the African Guyanese community. Vice President says it's there. You elect our people to local government and we'll give you funds to run the cities and the local governments. You don't elect us, we are not going to give you funds. That's the intimation. That's the insinuation. It's a total breach of the understanding of mutual agreement that we will live side by side. We live in a hostile political environment, but there are boundaries. The PPP has kicked down those boundaries. Politics are going to change in Guyana forever after this. And the African Guyanese community has to defend itself. It has to defend itself. And the sooner we come to understand that, the better for all of us. Because there are two consequences of this. Either the country goes up in ethnic conflict, or the PPP becomes a full-fledged dictatorship. Because once you try to control people, you have to put mechanisms in place to control them. So you have to activate the state apparatus, the coercive apparatus of the state. So we've already moved into the zone of dictatorship. We notice the police is now policing the African Guyanese community for every little thing. One of our activists in the Namstel reported to me today that PPP people were putting up flags in the village, and he said to them that, look, man, you all have always put your flag up on the public road. And now you're coming in the village and putting your flags in. You're disrespecting us. The next thing you know, the police arrives at his house. Just for saying that. Things that we took for granted in Guyana as Black people that, we could do. The police is now policing Black people for every little thing. That is how slavery operated. You now cannot say anything against the PPP. The police is there. So we have moved into a full-fledged police state, a dictatorship. And the police is policing Black people. Now, over time, that is not going to become sustainable. People are going to find ways to fight back. And it will put the country into the zone of ethnic violence, ethnic conflict. And the thing with people when they have plenty power, it's like they don't care. They will look and they will see trouble coming, but they tell themselves, look, we have the state at our disposal. We have the army, we have the police. They're going to stop any uprising. And so they press on. We're at a dangerous place. Political parties are organized to run in elections, to win elections, and to govern. And so political parties are limited on what they can do, or they limit themselves on what they can do as far as race and racial conflict is concerned. Because as political parties, they're looking to get crossover votes and so on. And they don't, in a full-fledged way, defend their ethnic communities. That has been our experience in Guyana, and it is the experience for the most part in other ethnically divided societies. The onus is for African Guyanese to organize inside of political parties as they're doing, but to organize outside of political parties. And one of the first things we have to do is to organize, to speak to the consciousness of our people. Part of why that minority of African Guyanese are going to the PPP is a lack of consciousness, lack of racial consciousness. Racial consciousness, or any consciousness, any group consciousness, arises out of a sense of belonging. And in a sense, the chickens are coming home to roost. Because over time, we've come to believe the myth some of us have. We keep banging that people should not be African Guyanese. They should be Guyanese. We've been banging that thing for decades. It doesn't affect Indian people, because Indian people have their ethnic religion, and so in a sense, they're living their ethnic culture in a spiritual way every day, whether they're Hindus or Muslims. And even when they become Christians, They're Hinduized Christians, because they're Christians who live in the Hindu community. And so there is a consciousness of self in the Indian community. And that is why they can easily separate from Guyana when they don't hold power. African Guyanese, on the other hand, are more susceptible to this notion that they're not Africans. And so there is not that sense of consciousness, that sense of being. It comes and goes there. During the Black Power period of the 1960s and 1970s, there was a flush of Black pride and Black dignity all across the diaspora. But then the further away we move from that, the less conscious we've become. We're no longer conscious of how we dress. We're no longer conscious of where we spend our money. Those markers of consciousness are no longer there. And so it is easy for people to come into our communities and to raid us. All they have to do is to dangle something in front of us. And there's no consciousness to kick in. And so we have a problem of consciousness in our community. It's a wake-up call. You know, we can curse those people who've crossed over. We can call them all kinds of names. And they deserve to. But what we are seeing is a lack of consciousness. And so we've got to begin to deal with the consciousness issue. I think we took it for granted that our people have become conscious, and we stopped doing that kind of work. I played at the beginning of the program, The Mighty Juke, Teach the Children. And so we've got to begin to do that work. We've got to begin to deal with Black consciousness. I made reference to our East Indian brothers and sisters. I'm sure they have their little problem of consciousness, but it's not so pronounced because they have institutions. They have Indian institutions. So their consciousness doesn't have to depend on the political party. They go to church every day of the week, or as regular as they can, and they go to church and they get Indian consciousness there. We don't get Black consciousness from our churches. Our churches are not necessarily Black churches. So at the religious level, we don't have consciousness. We have Black organizations, but they're Black organizations that they come to life, once a year, emancipation. They come to life and we do our thing, and then we close off shop until the next year, emancipation. But the kind of work that I'm talking about has to be a 24/7, 365 days per year work. We have to bring to bear consciousness of self. There's no other way out. We have to be conscious of ourselves as African people. That work has to begin like yesterday. Sometimes we get thrown off because our people tell us you talk too much and what we want is action. And so we don't do that painstaking work of teaching and giving consciousness, putting consciousness and making it available to our people. In a sense, we have to create a renewed African, a new African in Guyana. We have to start to create a new African. The schools are not teaching African history, African Guyanese history. So our children are not educated in the formal sense. In a sense of themselves. So we've got to begin this work of consciousness building. We may not see the results of it next week or the following week, but we have to do it. We have to learn our history. We have to learn that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. We have to build that consciousness. That is going to serve as a defense. It is too easy. It is too easy to come into the Black community and wave $40,000 in front of people and they're gone. And you know, we can cuss them, as I said. You know, nothing is wrong in abusing them, but at the end of the day, we've got to fix something in our community that makes it so easy. Yes, it's not a critical mass, it's not thousands, but it's enough of them. Some of them may genuinely be fooled, some of them think they can fool the PPP. All kinds of things are going through their heads, but the fact of the matter is, it is too easy to come into our communities and to raid people like that. Now the PPP has to be condemned for what it's doing. It is practicing a raw kind of racism. And we have to condemn them, but we have to do more than condemn. We have to stop them. And we are not able to stop them. We are dependent on the political party, but the Black political party, or the party that Black people give them most of their votes to, is weak right now for all kinds of reasons. And when you don't have other organizations, you then are open for all kinds of abuse. So we have to build institutions in our community. Those existing organizations, we have to strengthen them. But we need an organization to deal with the question of consciousness in the Black community, pure and simple. Consciousness of history, consciousness of yourself, consciousness of your worth. We have to start somewhere. We have to start somewhere. Because it's frightening. I don't think the PPP is going to, I may be wrong, but I don't think the PPP is going to win the election in Linden and Georgetown and New Amsterdam and Bartik. I don't think so. But not because they're not going to win. We must not recognize what they're using this campaign to do. Even if they do not win in those places, they would have weakened the Black community. because they're playing with people's minds. And as Walter Rodney once said, if you use my race to dehumanize me, I have to use my race to humanize myself. And there's a dehumanizing of the Black person. It's a dehumanizing. It sicks one's stomach to see what some Black people are allowing themselves to do. You know, I always, as you all know, make a distinction between genuine PPP members. They're Indians who will defend the PNC. So that they've always been, and they're Blacks who have been in the PPP. I'm not talking about them. Don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about Indians who are genuinely PNC or Blacks who are genuinely PPP. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about those who can easily be raided. And it sicks one's stomach to see it. And when one knows that they're running after crumbs, that makes it even more sickening. But at the end of the day, we have to take the majority of the responsibility for what has happened. It's a weakness in our community that is being taken advantage of. We've got to walk in our communities, and we have to talk to Black people as Black people. You know, I've been, shouting at the PNC leaders and asking them to start being a little bit more Black. But even as I'm shouting at them, I don't expect much from that quarter. They're not the people who go into party politics. They're not, even if they're conscious, they're not going to use that consciousness in the party. So the work that I'm talking about has to be done outside the political parties. If we get some help from the political parties, fine. But we have to do that kind of work. They're Black organizations. IPADG is the umbrella organization of 50-something, 60-something Black organizations. We have ACDA. ACDA does work in Georgetown, and the big thing is around emancipation. We have Coffee 250 and all these organizations. But with so many Black organizations and the low level of consciousness in the Black community, it says more about what these organizations are not doing than what they're doing. With 60-something Black organizations, and I'm sure there are more, we should not have the problem of consciousness or lack of consciousness in our community. I'm not blaming young people, because I think we have to renew. We have to renew our covenant with ourselves. And we have not been doing that. We have taken it for granted that all is well and all is not well. All is not well. Look at the Black community. We don't have a newspaper to reflect our views. We have 4 daily newspapers. 3 of them are owned by other races than Black. The other one is owned by the government, and we know the government is pro-Indian. Look at the radio stations. Even when they're owned by blacks, they do not look after the black interests. Look at the television. We don't have, the only black television station is Channel 9. And Channel 9 is limping. It's limping along. The levers of power, all the levers of power, are outside of the control of Africans. And when we have Africans who do well in business, they feel that they have to kowtow to people of another ethnic group. And so they don't feel a responsibility to us. A lot of the young, successful black people will tell you plain they don't want nothing to do with black organizations and so on. They have become very individualistic. That makes it even more imperative for us to organize in our community. We should aim to have in every village a chapter of a black organization that is geared towards consciousness. We need an organization to deal with the problem of consciousness. We have to, split up the work. Ipadaji has been paying a lot of attention to, economic issues, holding workshops and, procurement and small businesses and so on. And that's very good work because we need black entrepreneurs. But if you create black entrepreneurs without black consciousness, the black community doesn't benefit from those entrepreneurs. So at the center of it is black consciousness raising. I am prepared to help to lead such an organization. This is my message tonight. I had seen this drift. And 3 years ago, we had created an organization called the Society for African Guyanese Empowerment, SAGE. And we started to do some organizing around education, and the pandemic came and we had to discontinue that work. At the moment, we operate in Buxton. We have a SAGE chapter in Buxton. But we need to expand that organization to the rest of the country and dedicate ourselves towards dealing with consciousness raising. We have to be single-minded. There are other black organizations that are doing other things, but I don't think there is any one organization that is dedicated towards raising consciousness, getting our people to have a sense of worth, a sense of dignity, to be empowered spiritually and otherwise. That's what I'm talking about here. I belong to other black organizations, I'm a founder member of Coffee 250. I belong to the 1st of August movement in Buxton. But I realize we do not have a black organization to do consciousness raising. And I come here tonight to put before you this proposition. As I said, we already have the Society for African Guyanese Empowerment that was created to do exactly that 3 or 4 years ago. And we can expand that organization, or if people feel they want to form another one, that's fine by me. But we have to begin to do the work of consciousness raising now. Now. As I said, even if the PNC APNU holds on to the municipalities and the NDCs in their stronghold, even if they do that, and I have every confidence that they will. But what this local government election has revealed is serious weakness in the Black community. For people who have gone through slavery and colonialism, have gone through so much. We are being misled too easily. There always were people who would play on the other side. That has always been there. We are not a monolith. And I'm not talking here about joining the PPP. I'm talking here about allowing yourself to be used and abused for crumbs. So I wanted to use tonight to put that proposition to us. That we've got to begin that work now. And I intend to dedicate a fair part of my time and activism to help to lead such an initiative. And I'm talking about an organization that is non-partisan or multi-partisan, whatever you want to use. That is, we're talking about a Black organization that does not exclude anybody because of which party they belong to. Of course, PPP Blacks are not going to want to come near it, and that's fine. Because those Blacks in the PPP are themselves part of the problem. So I'm talking here about a broad-based Black organization to spearhead consciousness building in the Black community. I'm putting that proposition to you, and I want you all to consider it and to give us some feedback on what you think about it. Next week, I'm going to follow up and open up the lines to hear from you all. Because it's one thing for those of us who call ourselves leaders to say, we think this is what should be done. But the people may not think that is what needs to be done. So that is why I want to hear from you all on this proposition. If you all think that I am panicking and I am overstating the problem, or that we already have enough consciousness. So I want, first of all, to hear from you all. I'm already seeing some comments in the comment section. But we're going to put together a mechanism where you can state your views, some little questionnaire or something in the coming days. And once we agree that that's where we're going to go, then we get to work. And this is work that you don't have to be in Guyana, inside of Guyana, to contribute to, because it will call for a lot of teaching and tutoring and a lot of work, day-to-day work will have to be done to get this initiative off the ground. As I said, we don't have a black church. We have black people who go to churches, but those are not black churches. We have the spiritualists, but they're small. We have a black political party, but we can't expect the political party to do all kinds of work. The political parties do political work. An organization is what you defend your communities with. So that's what I put before you tonight, and I want you all to think about it. Next week, we're going to continue the discussion on it, and we're going to take it from there. But it's something I've been thinking about for the last couple of weeks, and I thought I would throw it out here tonight for us to get a handle on it. So there we are. There we are. On Monday, you all go to the polls, and you know where I stand on that. Do nothing to help the PPP. Do nothing to undermine the opposition party that is contesting the election. And if you must use your vote, use it as a weapon against those who are beating you down. So there we are. We're going to be live on Sunday night, Open Word Podcast. We may go live tomorrow night. I don't know, because it's it's an important weekend. So we may go live tomorrow at the same time at 7 o'clock, but I'll let you know during the course of the day. But here we are. We have to organize as Black people to deal with the question of consciousness raising. Good night, and I may see you all tomorrow night.